Hi, I'm Danny Black with Sports Ball, a Baltimore sports collectible podcast. Very excited to have Derek Grady, Executive Vice President of Heritage Sports Auctions, joining me today. Derek, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Hey man, thanks for having me, and it was a pleasure meeting you in Strongsville for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of us that share a pure passion for what we do, and we started this a long time ago, not for a business, and have fallen into it as a life and a career, and really enjoy talking to you and hearing about your background. And I just wanted to kind of geek out with you. We didn't get enough time while we had to work in Strongsville, and just kind of talk about how you got into this. You and I are not far apart in age. I started collecting probably on the Ripken rookies, and I think you were a couple years before that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I'm
and so,
51 now. So
okay, so yeah,
close.
so a couple
19.
years.
Well, yeah, you're younger, but I mean, 1980 was the first packs of baseball I remember opening.
So let's start right from the beginning. Where did you grow up? Who was your team? Who did you root for? And how did you get into packs at all?
Okay, so I grew up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. You'll know Johnstown from the floods. It's in your history
Yeah.
books. Um, So basically, I think it was 1979. Football was the first football that was bought for me as a box, and I'm a diehard football guy. Roger Staubach's my idol, even though I'm in Western Pennsylvania. Everybody told me to root for the Steelers, so I did the opposite, and I rooted for the Cowboys. And Roger Staubach's in his last. Unfortunately, he retired, and I was crying when he retired because I had him only for a year. But I was a Pirate fan, so I'm a Cowboy fan and a Pirate fan. Okay.
So in 1979, you were a Pirate fan.
Yes,
Well,
we are family.
we're not getting off to a good start here. You guys kicked
Oh
our
shit. Oh
cooked our
sorry.
ass on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you came back on us. We'll let that pass.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that because I
Yeah.
do like, I also grew up with Cal Ripken, and I did go to some Oriole games, so I was that got me into the Pirates. Not, I mean, look, everybody's happy. We won a World Series. We are family. The parade, everything like that. But I was really more football, and then in baseball, it was really we started. We weren't a great team then after that, and Ripken came up, and that's a few hours away from me in Johnstown. So that was went to some games and followed Ripken's career. I was happy to see him win in '83. Right? You were happy, obviously.
Of course.
But it's really been, and then in hockey, Lemieux came, and so it's really, and I don't have a basketball team,
Right.
so it was just kind of root for star player. I liked Magic Johnson a lot. Larry, then
And that was a
Jordan
good
came
time to
along,
be in Pittsburgh because you're coming off a bunch of Super Bowls. The Pirates, in the late '70s are dominant.
but I wasn't a Steeler fan.
Right, but I'm just saying in Pittsburgh. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah. No, they
you
were
guys just
drilled.
were used to winning. I mean, that
They
that
are
was
used
just
to winning at that point.
yeah. And so I guess kind of growing up, even though you weren't a Steelers fan, how did that transition go, and how did you even get into collecting cards and packs?
Okay, so that's a great story. So, I'm doing the lemonade stand thing, getting allowances, buying baseball cards, football cards, cutting grass, and then it just came to a stop. Put my cards away, and my best friend in school said, "Hey, do you still have your cards?" This is like say 1985. Okay, so I'm 5 years removed from collecting. He says, "What are you doing with your cards?" I said, I don't know. Let me, and I had always done that big Beckett book and go through and think I'm making money and this
Mm-hmm.
card's worth $1 and that card's worth $5, right? But always just put them back. And I said, no, I don't want to sell them to you. And he said, well, would you be interested in going to this? It's called the Cambria Coin Shop in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. I don't even think it's still there because the guy was older than dirt. Corky was his name. He was like 80 in the 80s. So if he's still alive, God bless him. I don't think he is. Maybe he was 70. But they had a baseball card store on the other side of the coin store that was only open on a Saturday.
Oh,
And
cool.
when they opened that door and I saw that you could get, a Willie Stargell rookie, a Lou Brock card, a Thurman Munson card, a Mickey Mantle card. They were too expensive even back then, right?
Sure.
But Brooks Robinson, Frank Robinson, all these guys, you could get all these Hall of Famers. And I was like, oh my God, this is where all those cards on the Beckett, you can go get them. Because I didn't know of any card shows around other than flea markets and such. So I was hooked ever since then. Then I started work, not that store, but then I started to do shows, started collecting, buying boxes, opening them. Then they ran some local shows. I went around those at one point. Then next thing I know, I'm setting up. then I intern
How
or
how old were you when you first started setting up? Because I did the same thing. When did you start?
16. I
Oh,
had my
yep,
grandfather drive me around
yep.
to shows and to card stores. My
My biggest
grandfather
problem
drove
is
me.
getting the glass cases. I always needed somebody to help me
He
get the
made
glass
them for me.
cases. Oh,
He
that's
made
cool.
my showcases. It was pretty
Very
cool.
cool.
What? Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I
Okay. So
wasn't
you're
handy.
16 and you're doing shows. You're
Yeah.
like me. You're a little pisser with your Beckett guide, and
Yep.
different than a lot of people. I'm looking at X Mint, Mint, very, and near Mint, and
Yep.
you probably had a little bit of stricter eye than the rest of us. So how did you use that guide even at 16
You
when you were
know,
doing shows?
I took it literally when I looked in the guide because you know how everybody used to price their cards at say high Beckett or high whatever the price was?
Everything was high Beckett. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, but in the beginning of it, it kind of told you what the grades were. I took that literally.
Right.
Okay. And did the best I could. The only thing I would tell you the market changed on, as you know, because we're not that far apart to where you know that cards that were packed fresh, even if they were off center, still dealers would still sell them as near mint to mint. Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that pack fresh look. And I didn't go for necessarily the cards that were centered that have a touch corner. Now people want cards centered. I don't care if it's creased. They want it centered over a card that's way off center. So I had a lot of cards in my collection that were mint out of packs, but maybe off center. Okay. I also bought centered ones. I did very well on those. But the
Mm-hmm.
ones that were off center, I still have somewhere, you know. But I took it literally. So the only thing that's really changed in condition when people ask, I would say the centering has become a huge, huge priority for the collectors. Eye appeal is everything now.
No, you're 100% correct. I had a beautiful 48 leaf Ted Williams that was off center, and I got more feedback on that. And it was a beautiful card.
Yeah.
And it really bothered people on the centering. And I said the face is great, the card's beautiful.
When they
I
look at
don't
the
care if it's
centering,
70-30, right?
which
But
is what I tell
yeah,
people when they're buying packs. You can go step up and buy a 54 pack for 10 grand. There's a chance that your Aaron comes out as if you get an Aaron,
oh,
you
sure.
may get so pissed you might rip the card in half. It can come out miscut. It can come out with 3 hit corners. It can come out creased. It can come out for sure off center. Okay. To get cards centered back in those days, it was not easy. We pick up original collections all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
when you're buying collections or you see collections come through,
Mm-hmm.
they could be literally packed fresh, but again, they're off center. So to find something centered and in nice shape, very difficult. And that's why I think you're seeing in this new hobby boom that how much these nines and eights and sevens are going for on cards that we could have bought for the last 10 years, which I didn't do. Um,
Right.
bought a lot of cards that are now just have blown up. Even when you look at
Absolutely.
mid-grade Jackies, Clementes, Aaron's, Mazes. I didn't know a 56 Maze and a 5 is now
Mm-hmm.
like $1,000 card. When did that
Yeah.
happen? Where have I been?
I mean, the funny thing is, and a couple years ago, well, first of all, let me give a little background.
Okay.
You spent 2 decades as SGC. What was your official title? Head
Okay.
grader,
So,
poobah of numbers.
so I was, yeah, I was a director of grading at SGC. So when they first started, I was like the third employee and
Okay.
then worked my way up to be the head grader. They kept hiring. And I was a senior grader within, a month or two. Then I became the head grader in 2000 and I stayed there till 2003. Then I
Okay.
got
So, yeah, I just wanted people to know because I had the advantage of knowing that before we went
Oh,
down a
sure.
rabbit
So in
hole. Yeah. Yeah.
1998 to 2003, I was at SGC, one of the, founding, I wasn't an owner, but I was one of the first employees. And the dealer that started that was named Joe Merkel. And
Mm-hmm.
in my travels as a dealer in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, he did Chicago sports cards. It was his. They bought and sold vintage cards on a national level, and I was actually buying cards off of him and his partner John Quinlan. And I'd go to Chicago, meet them in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
I did the national with them a couple times, so that's kind of where I went on a national level. Then seeing all the major dealers, my first introduction to Mister Mint. It was like he was a
We
joy.
all grew up with Al Rosen. Yeah.
Yeah, what a joy he was.
Yeah.
And so I would work for them, and I would buy cards from them for my collection, and then I thought nothing of it. The cards, I think they eventually parted ways. and I'm just interviewing for regular jobs doing cards on the side, and he called me and said, "Hey, do you wanna take a shot at coming at this to this grading company?" I was like, "Okay, what are you paying?" And they were offering me as much, it might have been 40 grand back then. Well, that's
Wow.
what trucking companies and enterprise run, management. I had a 4-year degree from Pitt, and I was getting offered jobs in management, and they basically were offering me the same thing. So I was like, "Why not try it?" So I commuted to New Jersey, and I'd stay in a hotel, during the week and then drive back home on the weekends, and then that turned into, you know, just went from there. So then I took that we took off at SGC. I was there till 2003. Then an auction company wanted me to come work, an
Mm-hmm.
infamous auction company.
Mm-hmm.
You can take a guess which one that was.
I'm familiar with your background.
Okay.
If you want to discuss it, otherwise it's public
No, I mean, it
record.
was Mastro Auctions, and the catalogs were great, and I didn't work in Chicago. I had nothing to do with any of that stuff.
And
Um,
so people don't know, for a period of time they were as big as anybody.
oh my god. It was like the
Yes.
Sears catalog. Remember when you got the
Right.
Sears Christmas catalog? You might be a little too young for that, but man, when I got the
No,
Sears.
I'm not.
Oh, you remember
Yeah.
the Sears catalog? Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Everybody wanted, you circle everything you want, you tell your parents, you know.
Absolutely.
Well, in the Mastro catalogs, they were the ones that really made these catalogs that now people emulate today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's where that started. And Bill obviously did some stuff and got in trouble with the feds, but I was out of there. I went back to SGC. I miss grading kind of. I
Mm-hmm.
enjoy grading. And they offered me a great offer to come back. So from 2000, so then I was at so I was gone from 2003 to 2007, 2008. Then I went back to SGC for 3 years. Okay. So now I'm the head grader again,
Right.
back in the saddle. And then Heritage came
That
and
was
said,
what I was wondering.
we're number this in cards. We want to be number one. We're gonna, and they made me an offer. Again, I do like grading a lot.
Right.
At the same time, I collect memorabilia as well because I see cards in my sleep. Okay. So because now Heritage gives me the ability to be a card expert and a memorabilia expert. So I've learned a
Yep.
lot about memorabilia because I collect it, and cards. I'm obviously a grader. So I mean, 19th century to present, I pretty much know it. Other than when I say present, I should qualify that because there's so much stuff coming out that I don't know, and I'm just, these people that come up to your table and say, "Hey, this John Morant, it's a one of one. What's it
Right.
worth?"
Pink refractor,
Oh,
auto, prism,
yeah,
mosaic,
elephant
hyper.
skin. How about
Right.
those
Right.
things? Like, what in leopard skin? Elephants are like,
Yeah.
the names, they've jumped the shark pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. But the difference between when you're at a show and somebody's like, "I have a one of one." Well, there's 75 different one of ones now. If you
Mm-hmm.
have the national treasure numbered to X, it's worth this. If you have this optic card that's a one of one, it's worth, it's just, there's so many different values. Trying to learn that stuff, authenticating whether it's trimmed or it's been, a patch has been replaced or something like that, that's one thing. But they're coming up to me already graded. What's it worth?
Right.
And I'm like, okay. It used to be
Well,
easier.
no, I say all the time, I get emails. I've just become a virtual price guide for people who are too lazy to look it up online.
Hmm.
I appreciate seeing the cards. I love talking the cards. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But because the comps have gotten so much harder, like you said, with all these variations,
Well, and the
that,
and the you know, you want to talk about a volatile market. Okay, 56
yeah.
Mays. Yeah, when I was kind of kidding that, five was a couple $100 forever. Now they're 800 to 1,000.
Hmm.
They don't retrench too far back. There's these modern cards can literally be 5 grand one day and then just trending down till it hits 500.
So I don't believe in blanket statements, but I typically tell people vintage is your mutual fund, modern or ultra modern is your penny stocks, your
I love
Robinhood,
it.
and your day trading. And that's not a knock on that. A lot of
It's
people
not a
get
knock.
rich. A lot of people get rich, working the market, and working hotter and colder stocks on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Um, I think one of the weird things is, and this speaks, I think, to the change in the market, the change in the demographics, is when I started doing shows in the early '90s, we didn't have a term called modern and vintage. It was kind of either your dad's generation of players or your generation of players, unless you went to tobacco or something,
Yeah.
really, really old. because that generation grew up on the modern baseball card on those 50s cards. And so for me, I think it's we're now several generations removed from those cards.
Mhm.
So when I talk to my sons, I've got twin 11-year-old boys, their interest in the cards is totally different because of all the refractors. But they have to almost find a niche. Like maybe I'll just collect Donruss Optic, whatever, because it's too overwhelming. The prices change too much. And so I've encouraged even my clients, my kids, is to learn vintage. And I guess from a looking towards the future perspective, I know you like vintage. Do
Mhm.
you think in 30 years we're going to talk about Luca as vintage, or are we
Oh
always going to
boy,
call this a time period? Is this going to look like a period of
that's
time?
that's a great question. Never thought that I never thought of it that way. Like, will I consider Luca vintage? It's like, I guess so, because our people that predated us, they were
Mm-hmm.
our predecessors. Mickey Mantle was currently playing or had just retired. He had just retired for 10 years when I got into it. So those
Mm-hmm.
dealers were thinking of Mickey Mantle as still like a current guy. And
Right.
now it's vintage
That's
then.
Dwayne Wade.
Yeah. He's retired. He's now gonna be, yeah, I mean, 30 years from now, my God, am I gonna be 81? And maybe
Mm-hmm.
we'll meet again here. We'll do
It'll be a holographic interview or
that's a
something.
good point. It's gonna be interesting. And that's the one thing I do like about the 90s where I missed a lot of these inserts. Look what
Mm-hmm.
that stuff's going for now. The stuff that you didn't think anybody wanted or people paid too much when it first came out.
Oh, precious metal gems. I mean,
Oh
all
my
those
God.
things were like, what the heck is this? Yeah.
I took one in from a doctor that he thought he was the target. So he used to go to the Frankenson shows and he
Right.
wanted every Jordan. Well, when the precious metal gems came out, somebody told him, 8 grand for the green, and he paid it. And he just put those insert cards away. Okay. Put them all away. The pandemic happens, goes back to look at every Jordan he bought. He had
Mm.
every card, every insert card, not every autograph card, mind you, but
Mm-hmm.
every insert card. I was completely blown away.
It's
I'm seeing this
unbelievable.
stuff, and I was like, so he did a $10 PSA special, couldn't get his cards back. Calls Heritage,
I'm
asked
sorry.
me, asked me if I could help him with his turnaround time. And I said, what do you have? And he said, well, I just submitted some of my lesser stuff. I had a couple
Yeah.
hundred Michael Jordans I submitted that I wanted to submit. So what else you
Sure.
got?
Yeah.
Said I've got it. And he named some of that stuff that what is it, the 1997, the first game used card of Jordan, the jersey card
Mm-hmm.
that signed that we sold for over $1 million. He
And
had
he put
that.
that in a $10 submission.
No, he
Okay.
saved that stuff. He was afraid. He wanted to see how it
Okay.
came
Good.
back.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I submitted that one for him, and I submitted the precious metal gems. And of course, unfortunately, I believe the green one came back minimum size.
Mm.
Even though it's dead original and it should have graded an 8, it was packed pulled and he bought it. But PSA, because now the card's expensive,
Mm-hmm.
or Beckett graded the red one an 8. The
Mm-hmm.
green one we submitted to PSA. They put it in an authentic. And I don't know why I don't think we had time for the catalog. The card did amazing anyway, but I
Sure.
think that's hard for me so we can take a second to get into that. When a card is pack pulled, we know it's authentic. To put it in an authentic holder when they come that way, and you can look at the edges
Mm-hmm.
as a grader and determine that they come that way, to not put a grade on it, okay, or qualify it and say it's an 8, this,
Miscut or
small, a 30
right.
second
Right.
small,
Right.
but
Right.
original, to just blanket it as authentic, meaning if it's in an authentic, that means it could be trimmed, it could be color added. So to take
Mm-hmm.
a card, and you see this in vintage cards, 55 Bowmans
Mm-hmm.
can come, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
mantle cards, 65 mantles are miscut a lot. Okay, I'm not arguing that on a card that's wavy, okay, that's easy to put a grade on. But Tom Brady, the playoff contenders Brady, they are now
Yeah. Sure.
putting those more in authentic holders because they measure just a little bit small. The way they come out, that issue
Sure.
came small. But I bet you other guys in that year. I'm trying to think of another playoff contender from that year that's just not that good of a player. I bet you they grade them, but Tom Brady's
Oh,
going to get
sure.
measured. you
Right,
know,
because it's a creation of artificial value for the grading companies,
yeah.
to
They
be
don't want to put
quite
another one
frankly.
on a 9 or a 10
And they
unless
don't want
it's
to put
full
themselves out of
size.
business. Right. They don't want to put themselves out of business. But you brought up something interesting, and I have a little bit of a printing background. And so I want
Okay.
to dork out on the actual printing because I think this is, when we talk about ultra modern and we talk about vintage, a lot of what we're really talking about is not the error and not the players. It's the technical creation of the card, the
Mhm.
introducing of chromium, 89 kind of changing with the foils, and you start having a type of production of a card. My printing background goes back to the multicolor press when you're running them, a color at a time, and that's what you had for years. So you had different types of errors. Like you said, when you would pull a pack fresh card, because of the type of printing, the printing mistakes were X, Y, and Z because of that type of printing. Now we get into ultra modern, and you're introducing the foils and the chromiums. So when you look at from a technical printing side, how
Mhm.
has that changed when you have to look at surface scratches, on some of these cards, compared to a vintage? It's just two different materials. I mean, it's a real apples to orange, and we're putting it on the same, more or less, 4-point grading scale.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it really is, and that's why it's hard for me when got an invoice back the other day from PSA where clearly a modern grader graded it because every Gaudi that I submitted was the worst one would have been a 5, the best one would have been an 8, okay? But they're commons.
mm,
There's nothing some minor Hall of Famers, but meanwhile, a Gaudi 8 that's worth 800 bucks or 1,000 bucks, this dude's grading 9s and 10s on cards that are worth 2,000, 5,000, 20,000, and it's hard for me to understand why, in my opinion, graders are afraid to pull the trigger on you get a 7.5 instead of an 8, an 8.5 instead of a 9, okay,
well,
on a rookie card.
my theory is it goes back to the printing. They don't understand the difference.
Oh, they don't.
You
Oh,
have
they
to
100% they don't.
right. I mean, when you're talking about cards printed 100 years apart, if you're talking about an edge cut, I'm sorry, the blades and the systems 100 years ago were
Yeah.
different than what you have now. I mean, just something as simple as that.
Yeah. And to your point, I remember grading the cards are like literally coming out off the press as 10s if
Mm-hmm.
they're centered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you're looking for a surface scratch. So you can just 9 and 10 the heck out of anything. And then you don't want to kill a card and put it in an 8 when you can't see the scratch. So graders would say, well, in the holder, you can't see anything. So do you grade it for how it's going to look in the holder? And then you wanted to say if it's, you put a 10 on it when there's like no surface scratches, you put a 9 on it. And to get an 8, you really had to have several surface scratches, okay? Because you didn't want to kill a card with a little scratch that you can't even find,
Right.
you know. But now, yeah, they're made to be. I will tell you, the hard part for me is when they're putting 5s and 6s now on these jersey patch cards, or they're inserting part of the kitchen table in the card now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always a little bend and a little where you could some of the graders when they see where the patch went in, there's a
Mm-hmm.
little bend or something, they'll call that a crease. No, that's how they put that patch of the kitchen table in the card. So
Exactly.
there's going to be something, a little pressure wrinkle or something. I don't feel like they grade jersey cards or there's not, you don't grade the thing a 5 or a
I would have.
4.
I joked with somebody the other day, the Bill Russell jersey that went for auction that had the blood stain. I said if they
Okay.
would have cut that and put it on a card, they would have taken off the value for the stain on the jersey.
Oh, I believe that. Put an ST. Yeah. Yeah. That jersey went for $1 million.
Right, but had it been a card, it would have marked authentic for damage to the jersey.
They would have found something. They would have found a reason to kill it.
Right.
That's
So,
kind of I
yeah,
go into it, and I don't know about you, but I've gone in so we submit a ton of cards for our clients, obviously, right?
sure.
Sure you do too. We just submit constantly. There's so many raw cards out there. And between the 3 services, I do feel like SGC is the most accurate. They're smaller, and that gives them a chance to focus more,
Mm-hmm.
to scale up the right way. Beckett had to shut their doors to catch up. Okay, so we know they didn't scale right.
Mm-hmm.
And PSA shut their doors to certain submissions, basically cut off everybody for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't hire graders, so they're bringing in people from any, I don't know what they'll admit to, but either way, the grading has been conservative.
To
You
say
can
the
see
least.
the grading from 5 years, even 4 years ago, and back. Now you get a card, and you can have a 5 that's nicer than your 7. That is hard for me, and it's hard for a lot of clients to understand Why can I see that these older graded cards are higher, more liberal, and the new cards are more conservative by
So,
far?
so take off your heritage hat and your grading hat for a second.
Mhm.
If you are, John, and you're walking into a card show, and you got let's say $1,000 in your pocket, um, what turned you on as a collector? I mean, are you staying vintage because that's your world? Is memorabilia now you think something that
It's
we should
really
be looking at?
memorabilia for me. I think, and I can tell you that this has become true. It's not like Notre Dame here. Okay. I always believed if you can buy a Hank Aaron jersey and a Willie Mays game worn jersey, Roberto Clemente game worn
Mm-hmm.
jersey, Brooks Robinson, Cal Ripken, okay, and you could buy those. So when I started collecting memorabilia, those jerseys were 50 grand for an Aaron or a Mays jersey. Now they're a few hundred grand.
Yeah.
How could a jersey authenticated, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
some of them photo matched? How could that be worth less than a rookie card? How can that be worth less? I mean, this is what they wore in a game. The bats, the game used bats, this is what they hit home runs with. Very affordable to the point of now let's fast forward it. When you see a Mike Trout card sell for $4 million,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the vicinity over a Babe Ruth jersey. You know, Babe Ruth jersey is worth more. But other
Mm-hmm.
than that, you can buy any other jersey. Okay. Not that long ago, you could buy a Jackie jersey for $1 million. Okay.
Which is
Mike,
unbelievable.
okay.
Yeah.
Which is insane to me. Shouldn't every one
Mm-hmm.
of those be in the Smithsonian or
Oh
Baseball
yeah.
Hall of Fame or the Brooklyn Dodger History Brooklyn Museum? I mean,
It
the
should be in
fact that,
Kansas City. I mean, it should be anywhere.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And the fact that these things exist, there's more Mays rookies in eights and nines than there are Mays jerseys. Aaron, same thing. I have an Aaron photo match jersey flannel to a game he hit 2 home runs.
Wow,
Okay. He had two
that's
home
pretty
runs in
cool.
this jersey. The home run
I'll
king.
I'll give you my mailing address.
Okay, there you go. Just
So
gift it to you.
here's my theory, and you touched on this earlier. On modern cards, everything's a one of one. So we have this artificial, short print creation of value.
Sure.
My theory is when you look at pop counts on memorabilia and vintage cards, you have a true limited edition. And it's not an artificial. And the difference, I think, is what's being reflected in the market. And I think that'll play out. I think the newer money in a lot of the modern cards, that artificial one of one, when you have 17 one of ones on the same player in the same year, goes away. Well, you know this. How many Jackie Robinson authenticated game used jerseys are out there?
All
That number,
original. I think there's like five that are all original.
that's what I'm saying, and that number may go up by one or two in the next couple of years. Maybe,
Maybe.
um,
I could
maybe,
never say never, but it's not going to
right.
be by more.
So what you have now is a true pop count, a true limited edition, and that's not going to be artificially inflated because
Yeah,
they're
because
not going to come out.
graders
Right, they're
can
not going to come out
control.
with 10 alternate versions of that jersey. Just it's done. That was 1947 or the early
Mhm.
50s. That's not happening anymore. So that's one of my theories is when you get into real pop counts and like you're talking about high graded vintage cards, if you go into a PSA or SGC and you look at those pop counts, I mean you're talking about genuine limited edition. These are
Oh
not
yeah.
artificial. Yeah.
And and I do take in a lot when we're, and again, it's not all the time, but just say we get in a lot of Hank Aaron rookie cards. The average grade's probably a 4. But
Right.
from time to time, you will get a card that's every bit as nice of any 8 PSAs ever holdered, and they'll put it in a 7 or
Mm-hmm.
stop at a 7.5, which would have been an old 9. Okay. But now it's 7.5.
Right.
And it's just so frustrating for the client or the people that are just happy to see what sevens are worth now or throw. But at the end of the day, those are cards that would have been a shot 9 or shot 8.5, and that's hard that they don't allow the pop to get. And I don't look at it as my business as a grader. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I've always told anybody that wanted to ask if when Drake opened that box of 86 Fleer basketball, I don't care who it is, if he pulls out 3 10s or somebody walks through, they came into SGC. Let's just make that argument. They come to SGC, they bought the cards in the 80s. They have 20 Jordan rookies, and they had a
Mm-hmm.
great eye. I'd be happy and come out and shake their hand if they got 10 10s. And I would give them 10 10s out of 20. I don't, there's nothing, I tried hard not to compare cards to each other, and I also
Hmm.
am not going to count anybody's money. It's not fair, and I
It's a
think
great point.
graders can get jealous when
Hmm.
they're grading cards and whatever their wage is. I know it's not a ton because I've been poached a couple times from a grading company very easily, and I was the head grader.
Right.
Um, and I think it's if you like cards, it can be an enjoyable career. But I don't know that these graders do they look at it as putting bumpers on a car at the GM plant, or and just can't wait to slide down the dinosaur's back at like Fred Flintstone at 5 o'clock and
Yep.
leave, or do they try and get it right and do the best job they can? I feel like there's a lot of streamlining going on, and I do think there's a pop control. Look, there's 61 fleer basketball boxes out there still that get opened.
Hmm.
Chamberlains can come out nines and tens. You've seen pack fresh 61 fleer basketball. When they're centered, they're nice. I doubt they are excited to grade nines. I would be excited as a grader to put one of those in a nine
I feel
or
you.
to,
Yeah.
God forbid, grade a 10. I just don't think they do it anymore. I don't think they look at 78. Well, now you can't even submit a 78 common anymore. I was going to say,
Right.
when people were doing that for the registry, because you could
Yep.
get stuff done at $7 or $10. Now, the cheapest is what, 40 or 50 at PSA?
Yeah.
How can you submit? Now you have to get a 10.
Well, that's why I just submitted 30 cards for a client, and
Mhm.
they were all ultra modern. So when ultra modern, I do use a pre-screener, and 25 out of the 30 were rejected. By the pre-screener, and they
Oh, by
circled
one of
this.
your a guy that can grade,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he didn't think
it's
they
a
could.
submitter. It's a
Yeah,
submitter, and they just put it under the microscope and check those surface
sure.
scratches on the
And he
modern.
didn't think they could 10, or they didn't think they could 9.
Didn't even think they would nine.
Wow.
He was very honest, and he said,
Wow. Okay.
you're eight, you're probably a break even on the money, probably not worth it.
Okay,
Here's the
good.
ones that I think are maybe a nine, and he goes, I won't promise you a 10 on anything. And 25 out of the 30, we decided not to grade. So, to speak to your point now on the modern grading, it's a whole different scale.
And it's real money too. At $10, we take in
Yeah.
collections where I could submit 1,000 cards at $10. You now make it 40 or 50, that just went down to 100 cards or 50 cards. We'll run
Yep.
them raw. See, that's the one thing. I've got other graders here too.
Hmm.
Um, and not Tony. Tony's a memorabilia guy. Okay. If he knows I'm doing, he'll be like, I can't believe you just did that. I got to get on there. I, you
Uh,
know,
he owes me dinner in Jersey, Tony. If you're listening, you owe me dinner.
oh, there. He might be,
Yeah.
so he'll be texting you. But no, I have other graders here. We stand behind what we sell and we grade it. So if I don't want to submit, say in a 56 set, it came in at the end and the maze is going to grade a 4 or 5. I grade it like I would as a grader. We
Hmm.
call out the star cards and we do percentages on the sets,
Hmm.
and we get very, very few returns. But we're one of the only companies to just have great to that could be a professional grading company.
Yeah, and actually,
And
you brought up a good point. For full disclosure, I do work with you guys, and I just want to be upfront about that. You guys have and do represent some items that my clients have consigned, so I just want to be upfront
we
about that.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
and I think you probably look at us. I mean, look, we're worldwide. We get international bidders, so we're a good choice. I used us before I came here,
hmm
and I am strictly in, I bring in, well, not strictly. I'm strictly in sports, meaning, I would on entertainment or some other. If you had coins, I'd give you to somebody over there. I don't know that stuff, even though people try and give it to me all the time.
right.
They'll bring an outer space item to a show, and I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm a sports guy.
right,
Um,
exactly.
but no, it's I would just like for the companies to, as opposed to trying to get the stuff out the door as fast as possible, take your time and get it right. I think most collectors, if they were going to know that their stuff was getting streamlined, that's because then you have to crack it out and submit it again anyway. How about just get it closer to right, and I'll wait a couple extra weeks. So will my clients, because I realize there's people. I mean, I still talk to people that are like, I finally got my submission back from PSA after a year.
Well, and that's the whole thing right now. I have a Koufax rookie. You may not remember. You actually peeked at it in Strongville for me.
What
Um,
grade did I say I was? Roughly. You remember?
4 or 5.
Okay.
somewhere in that range. I've got it raw, and I'm going to submit it.
Yeah.
And to be frank, I've been lazy and haven't gotten around to it. Now I have to rush if I want to take it to Pittsburgh with me, and I got to
Ah,
decide if I'm dropping 120 on a quick return, or am I going to sit on this for a couple months and take it to the national? And for one card in that price range, the extra $60, the time value. This is a tough conversation on every card.
with that one, I would just say, what's the value on that? It's a couple $1,000 in a four. It's more
Yeah,
in a five.
yeah, 1,500, 2,500, depending
Okay.
on
And the fees, I'd get it back for Pittsburgh. But here's the thing, you could even pay that and not get it back for Pittsburgh. That's the best part of this. The
I
customer service has absolutely disappeared. Dealers waiting, dealers hoping to get their stuff back. Oh man, they have been so disappointed.
and
You
not
know.
only that, I think it's discouraging to the public.
Oh yeah.
We have no way to turn, or, I have no way to make it go faster. It doesn't matter how many cards I send to PSA.
Well, here's what
I'm
will
no,
happen.
yeah.
This goes for Heritage. We're one of the biggest emitters in to all the companies, right?
Please share this. I want everybody to hear this. Yeah,
There is nothing I can do. If I tell them we need it for an auction catalog deadline, I promise you this is what will happen. Oh, you'll get it.
right.
And it is going to get murdered. You do
Mm-hmm.
not, you don't tell me, you don't hold a gun to my head when I was at SGC and say, you have an hour to get this out. You're going to get any grader I know goes conservative. When you
Mm-hmm.
demand something back, even if they do it, you don't want to do that, is my
Yep.
point. You will get hammered.
Oh,
Okay.
sure. It's
If it
human
looks
nature.
like a crease, you're getting a four, even if it's the grain in the card, you will get hammered. So I've never been like, hey, we really need this back for a deadline. We'll pay up. If you ask a grader to go fast, you get killed. So I try not to ask for anything, back other than reholders. Reholders, they
Right.
can't kill you on. They
Right.
just put new plastic on it. So they can't murder you.
Real quick, because I promised to let you go. How do you feel on the new holders versus the old holders? I've had buyers that don't care because they like some of the older holders. They like the original, kind of being in the early '90s, one of
You
the
know
first
what?
people into grading, and then other people
I'll give
have
you
to
two
have the
different
newest.
I'll give
Yeah.
you two different takes. I want them to stop changing their holder because
Okay.
people are getting now. I take in stuff and people are like, "Well, you get a new holder for?" I mean, it's like now we're reholdering so many things, shipping them back and forth across the country. The card grade doesn't change, the player doesn't
Right.
change, the label doesn't change. It's just they want the new. What do they call the new holder? The light, some kind of blue. I forget what they.
It's
It's
the one with the
really
hologram. Yeah.
they did it to prohibit counterfeiting, which they're still figuring out a way. The criminals figure out a way to do it, right? But if you're a collector, I have collectors that really don't want to do it other than they hate the way their different holders look from
Mm-hmm.
PSA because there's five different versions.
Mm-hmm.
They want them all the same, but then they'll come and change it in 2 years again.
Right.
These people keep reholding cards. I wouldn't even want to be PSA with the liability of cracking out a 15 Cracker Jack set
Well,
every
that's what I
couple.
was wondering about. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do that. Okay. They do it. They don't like it. But if you keep changing your holder, people do want it uniform on display.
Right.
So they'll fly to PSA and pay these reholder fees. So I do like a lot of their new improvements, the way it looks. But as a collector, I don't love having five different versions. It would be fine. So back to it could be a 56 maze and a five. You could literally
Mm-hmm.
have five different holders, different
Right.
fonts on the label, and
Mm-hmm.
it just looks. Anybody would look at it and be like, "Well, that's off." I like uniformity. Most collectors do. So I hope they wouldn't keep changing their holder.
Do you look at collectors and investors differently?
But I'll be honest with you. Um, no, I mean, I don't treat them differently. Do I look at them differently? I don't try and give investment advice. If I do, it's exactly what you said. The blue chip, the mutual funds, the long term is vintage always. It's always been that way. The modern, if a guy's playing and he tweaks, Joe Burrow looks like he's going to be a stud. Dan Marino looked like he was going to go to another
Mm-hmm.
Super Bowl. He went to one in his second year, never went to
Mm-hmm.
one again. Joe Burrow could have the same fate. We don't know. Um,
Way to
Mike
throw out the University
Trout,
of Pittsburgh guy, by the way.
who's that?
Marino.
Oh,
Way to
Marino.
work.
Yeah,
Way to work in the
absolutely.
you
Yeah,
pitch.
yeah, no, and he still, and the key with him named as one of the greatest. And even younger people know who Dan Marino is, and that's
Right.
cool because he didn't win a Super Bowl, and people still give him props. But it's very risky. I'm still shocked that Mike Trout cards haven't. come down further.
Hmm.
He's always injured. He's not going to have Pujols numbers. Go look at Pujols' numbers and Trout's numbers. Tell me who has better numbers. And will Trout even get to Pujols by the time he's done? I don't think he will.
Well, like you said, on the modern cards, you get into so many more factors. You get into market size, TV distribution, popularity, endorsements, and all these things. Which year did their rookie card come out? Was there a refractor? Was it an auto? That's one of the tougher things for me on the modern cards, even the star players, because where's their growth potential? I mean, what else can Mike Trout do at this point? I mean,
And
he's.
yeah,
Go ahead.
but well, win a World Series. He's got to
Right, but
stand.
I mean, for pure value, are we talking 5%? More
Oh,
with
to your point, I don't know
yeah.
that it can go up. If
That's
anything,
what that's what I'm saying.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. He should have already had like 800 home runs to be valued at this.
right. So I
The
can't tell somebody
numbers
to
are
go
crazy.
buy Mike Trout and look for a return in the next 10 years.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. And that's why it's hard for me. I tell people they're on their own. I know, again, money's not an option for some of these guys, and they want to collect guys that are playing today. I
Yep.
tell them try not to go out. If you want my opinion, they're like, yes, I want your opinion. Okay, if I want to have a Joe Burrow card, I'm buying a mid range. I can't
Mm-hmm.
get hurt
Mm-hmm.
as much. Okay, you're going to go buy the $500,000 version, you can get hurt, and then you start to think, oh yeah, a Mays jersey. You
Right.
can get a Mays jersey for a couple hundred grand. You'd rather, and by the way, that would be an interesting test. Take a Joe Burrow card and put it on the table. Take a Willie Mays game worn jersey. How
That's
about
a
a Johnny
great.
Unitas game worn jersey? Put the Johnny Unitas game worn jersey on the table. Tell the collector to choose one. I want to see the person that picks up that modern Joe Burrow card. I don't
And
think they will.
I think you and I both know the truth. A certain demographic is going to.
Yeah, the kids
And it.
might, but
Yeah.
anybody that knows any historical background and say, "My God, that's a Johnny Unitas jersey. How does it even exist?"
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And I used Fernando Tatis Jr. as my example. I mean, listen, the kid's got more talent than probably almost anybody to come up in the last couple of years. But where are the injuries at this point? I mean, at some point you got to start saying they're adding up. At some point you see him in the outfield, goofing off while he's on the injured list. And there's nothing against the kid, but like you said, you're taking that risk. Willie Mays
Absolutely.
is not going to tear an ACL tomorrow.
And how about the
Um,
super refractors with the guys
right.
that haven't even played yet? One
Yeah.
second in the majors, and they're 100 grand.
Yeah.
People hoping for the next $1 million card.
Well, and you made a great point. You've got graders now that are grading cards far more than they earn, and that's got to be a psychological on
Yes.
anybody. I mean, if it were me, it would be a psychological thing. I mean, that's got to be hard to hold something in your
Well, I
hand
think
that's 2 years salary.
if you're cognate, you just have to be aware
Hmm.
and think just because this guy gave me 20 Michael Jordans and they're at the that one time 500 grand a piece, now they're 300 grand a piece, whatever. It's none of my business.
Hmm.
I have to grade them like they're Sedell Threats. Obviously, maybe you're going to look at the edges. You're going to obviously authenticate them better because people can add red. They can paint, use color to fill in the print dots, do
Hmm.
all kinds of crazy things. Okay, but don't penalize the guy because he gave you 20 of them. Don't make him have to submit one a week. If he
Right.
gets 10, congratulate him. Say maybe he should be a grader. Don't just murder people. And then the grading companies will say, but Derek, everybody wants the highest grade. They're just complaining because they didn't get a 10. You know what? I can prove that you're incorrect because we
Right.
can go crack out. No grading company would want us to do this, by the way.
Right.
Go buy a bunch of nines and tens, crack them out on camera safely, put them back in card savers, and ship them back to them. Let's see how many tens we get. There's a chance we get zero.
Uh, Absolutely. And one of the things that the secondary market is still driving for a lot of people the perceived value of what they're going to get when they sell. And depending if you're talking ultra modern, you're talking vintage, that can change the perception of people for what the market will be with each company.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to pick which company in which years because I don't believe in strict standards for those companies, but a lot of people do. A lot of people
Well,
want
I tried
SGC. Yeah, go ahead.
when I first went to SGC, and I truly believe this to this day, buy the card, not the holder.
That's exactly where I was headed. I
Why
heard you say
can't
that to Dr. Beckett in an interview a couple years ago,
Yeah,
and that's one of my favorite things that I've said for years. And please
always said it.
continue. Yeah.
Why am I? Because you can easily look at a PSA 6 or 7 on I don't care if it's an Aaron rookie and a 7, and there's an SGC 7 and a Beckett 7. The one that look, and assuming these are the three reputable companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Beckett on vintage can be hit or miss, but
Mm-hmm.
let's just say their best team is grading.
Mm-hmm.
Just because PSA is the publicly tradable, not they're not anymore, but they will be again someday, right? They're
Oh,
the
sure.
big fish, right? Not every one of their cards has been graded perfectly. Not every card I graded was graded perfectly. There's cards to give you even a better example. So I would say, buy the look at it, educate yourself so you can make the decision. There are people that blindly buy PSA. It could have a
Mm-hmm.
crease on it in a 7, they made a mistake and they buy it because that red label. I would tell you to educate yourself. Secondly, there are cards I graded at SGC that if I have them in auction, I don't remember that I graded it, obviously, but just say that I did, and we looked it up in the computer system at SGC. There's cards I don't recommend to clients. If they said, "Hey, would this be a 7 today?" I might have graded it, and I'll say, "Pass on it. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
7." I try and keep it real with the clients for a long-term relationship. Know what they want. They want a centered card. Don't push anything on anybody
Mm-hmm.
and just sell the card as a nice card. And that's why you'll see, even on VCP, you can see why did that 7 sell for so much more. We had an SGC 5 outs, outsell a PSA 5.5 by 100 grand on a
Wow.
52 mantle. I never thought I'd see that. But the SGC 5 was a centered 52 mantle. And as you know, centering means the world.
Especially
But
in that set.
but if
Yeah.
but to be honest with you, my consigner on the PSA 5.5 was like, what the hell happened? How did an SGC beat a higher grade PSA by 100 grand? And I was like, centering? I don't know. I was
It's
disappointed.
that public perception. Yeah. If I'm them, I'd be curious too.
Yeah. Oh no, he was disappointed. And he didn't, and the estimate on his card was achieved, but he couldn't believe a SGC lower grade sold for so much. I was happy to see it only in the sense that people looked at it and said, I'm buying the condition of the card, not the three letters. And I liked, and by the way, full disclosure, I have all companies in my collection back at PSA and SGC.
So do I, for full disclosure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and because I've, I've
And I think most collectors do. Except somebody who's 100% tied to a registry or something where they,
agreed.
are totally,
Well, you know
want
what?
to target.
I'll tell you
Yeah.
what made it that way too. PSA and Beckett shut down.
Mm-hmm.
SGC never shut down.
Right.
They went from 20 employees to 125, 30 employees to 160.
Well, I'm one of the people that switched a lot of stuff to them during the pandemic because I found their
I was
customer
going to,
service was
they do
great
a
and
good
their
job.
turnarounds were reasonable.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're reasonable and they do a good job. And if they hadn't, they wouldn't be around. But PSA opens their doors again, and if they do a good job, I mean, look, I don't think here's the one thing I do realize: if you and I owned a restaurant together
Mm-hmm.
and our food sucked,
Mm-hmm.
we'd be out of business. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
PSA, Beckett, SGC, they can misgrade cards to the cows, come home. We're still lining up to go send them another package because you have to get it graded. And that's where, and I'm not playing favorites. I'm just saying
Right.
any company that offers bad customer service and a bad skill set at grading really shouldn't be slammed in with cards. We still do it. Even if we get killed on an invoice, no matter who it came back from, we send it we
Yep.
send it right back in again and pay more money. So we pay more money.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
and
it goes back to my Sandy Koufax thing. I mean, it's not my preference. I don't want to pay 120 or $150 to get it back quickly from PSA. I mean, that nothing about that appeals to me, other than there's
it's
not a lot
PSA.
of options. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. For that. So, all right, I've taken up more time than I promised. So I'm going to leave you with two questions. One,
Good.
is there any way to do a universal registry, and is that ever something that the companies would get together on?
I've I was willing to do it at SGC
Okay.
when we were there
Okay.
and provided, and then you say, don't be a douche when you're looking at the competitors' cards. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just understand, unless you know that it's altered or somebody miscolor added, you should do it. You
Mm-hmm.
have to almost do an exception just in case. PSA and SGC do not like each other. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
it's, I think PSA
Yeah,
doesn't want,
super.
they just want to be the only company. That's why they don't cross over cards. Think about that logically.
Right.
How can they cross over like nothing? Okay. There's a
True.
reason. And again, you can prove that. Go buy 10 PSA cards, put them in SGC holders, submit them back to PSA, see if they cross them.
Right.
They won't. It's been proven time after time. I think it would be great for the hobby. I don't think PSA wants to give anybody that, because they're the ones that started the registry. They have all those customers. If they open it up to SGC, you know what's going to happen. Now they have SGC cards in their registry. I don't think they're going to do that, but I think it's a great idea, and I
Well,
think somebody
yeah.
should do it. It
I
would make
just
it
think
easy.
I'm walking around Strongville and I'm thinking, we've got like the West Side Story, people that only buy PSA, people that'll buy anything SGC, and I'm
Yep.
thinking, what a shame, I could put together. Listen, I'm a Orioles fan. The '54, first year in Baltimore was a
Okay.
great PC collection for me. It's not an expensive collection.
Sure.
Now, do I want them all in PSA or all SGC? Yes, for looks. Do I care which one? No, I don't.
Yeah.
But for a registry,
It would be
I'm
cool.
right. So it's just stuff like that. So
Yeah.
last question, and I'll let you go. I ask this to everybody: if you walk into a room, what is the best type of item? What are you looking for somebody to bring to a heritage table? What right now is unique? What are you not seeing that you wish you were seeing more of?
What am I? Say that again.
Like, what are people bringing for consignment? I mean, I see a
Okay.
lot of the same things over and over. Quite frankly, I think we see a lot of the same autograph type of stuff. I mean,
Yep.
we see a lot of the same stuff. Great vintage cards are
Yep.
wonderful. I mean, a 33 Gaudy set is great. But what do you wish you got more of? Is it those game used memorabilia? Is it something else?
Yes, because it tends to go into a black hole when
Okay.
these new guys come in and there's only so many. Again, I don't know that I could get you a cert. If you said money's not an option, go get me a Ruth or Gehrig jersey. The guys that own them are multi millionaires. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody that owns one of those jerseys that isn't. There's only a handful. I don't think we could pry it out of them. Anytime anything like that is unearthed, that's very cool. Okay. I love the fact that the ticket market has now just gone
Oh,
nuts. I missed it.
and all kinds of tickets. I mean, it could be a
All
game
kinds.
ticket, could be an airplane ticket, whatever it is.
Could be anything. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Anything. And concert tickets,
Huge.
it's really cool. I love seeing with this new emergence in the hobby. The hobby's what, 5x itself since the pandemic. The
Mm-hmm.
shows are packed. Okay. There's people now collecting everything. Magazines. Now that they're grading those, we're setting records on magazines.
Yeah.
Not just us, obviously. I mean, anybody that has a 9.8 on a rookie bird cover, or now they're considering magazine rookie covers. I mean, it's, man, there's a collectible for everything. And we've really, you saw what Strongsville was like. It was packed both days. I just
Yeah.
did a
No, it was
Long
great.
Island. I just did the Long Island show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm friends with Jimmy Ryan, the promoter. He promotes the East Coast National. His 2 day Long Island show was his best attended show of any New York show he's ever done.
Wow.
And that show used to be a graveyard at 2 o'clock on a Sunday. You could bowl in the aisles and not hit anybody.
I mean, I try to hit everything in a reasonable driving distance from Baltimore, and I
Yeah,
will
where does that
say.
take you? Does that take how?
So
What's reasonable?
I get Chantilly 2 or 3 times a year. I get
Yep.
Philadelphia 2 or 3 times a year. I'll do Pittsburgh coming up at the end of May. I did Strongsville. I'll do the national. Even if I have to fly
Let
for
me
that.
ask you a question.
Yeah.
When's when the national, we get it that the promoters of the national won't put it back in Baltimore because of the cost, but everybody loved that. Is there going to be a great Baltimore show someday?
So I have toyed around with the idea of actually starting one here.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think this area is dying for one. We have some of
I do
the
too.
best zip codes on earning per household in the DC suburbs in Maryland.
Yeah.
DC does not have a major show. Chantilly is a great show, but it's a little bit of a different show. It's more widespread. A lot of more. I think to the center of the demographic, a lot of Funko Pops and stuff like that. I
Big
think if it
autograph show.
big autograph show, yeah, a lot of retail type of product, and it's great. I love going, and I try to hit
Sure.
all of them. I'm looking for a solid card show within 30 minutes of Baltimore, one way or the other. I think just
Why
between
hasn't that happened though? Honestly, do you have any idea? Was there
because
one?
people are scared of Baltimore. If I'm going to be honest, our
Oh,
tourism is not great right now. I mean, we finally got legalized gambling. That's one of the big things that brings the tourism. People with the national have been pretty frank about that. The Mint Collective, I think, went through some of that also. And choosing where to go. So we're hoping that brings in. Outside of DC, we have a casino. that is what's it, Maryland Live, which is a huge complex. It wouldn't surprise me if we end up there in a couple of years because that's not
Okay.
in downtown Baltimore. That's kind of in between DC and Baltimore, and that's a first class facility. So I'd like to bring it there. So,
I feel like
uh,
that's a great area for a trade show. I really do.
well, yeah, you and I can do it. What else do we have?
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, nothing.
Yeah,
I'm not
nothing else
busy.
going on, right? No,
Nothing
yeah.
going. I've-
Well, that being said, Derek, I've truly enjoyed getting to know you. I hope this is the first and not the last of many visits here. And I look forward to seeing you if you're not in Pittsburgh, definitely in Atlantic City.
Well, make sure you hug Geezy for me.
Well,
Okay, because I have to go to Dallas to talk to him. He will be in Pittsburgh, so
oh,
be prepared.
well, I'll hear him across the room, I'm
Hey,
sure.
man, it was a pleasure getting to know you, and definitely I'll do your show anytime you want and hang
Yeah.
out
Yeah, be in
whenever.
touch. Good talking to you. I love people that share my passion in the hobby, and you're certainly one of them.
Oh,
Thank
I
you,
do.
Derek.
Trust me, man. So,
All
all
right.
right. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Take care.
Take care.